I'll begin. I do want to say if I do have very little to read for my opening. I would ask that if there are questions, you wait till the end, but I understand if you can't do that. It's a matter of my preference. Without further ado, I am here to talk about the proposed at-large system for off-campus representation. I am claiming that it raises serious concerns about the adherence to our constitutional principles and the preservation of equitable political representation. I'm now going to outline the key issues at hand. First, while our Constitution allows for some deviation from perfect equality, the complete elimination of district-based representation for off-campus students may exceed what is considered practicable. We must question whether this drastic change aligns with the spirit of our governing document. Second, our Constitution ensures minimum representation for on-campus areas and family housing, suggesting an intent to maintain some level of localized representation. The all-at-large system contradicts this intent for off-campus students, effectively silencing their local voices. And third, while the at-large map may simply makes it so that no party can have any representation unless they are able to win a plurality of the votes. Yet there is no real pathway for any minority party to get there, since they would have to do it all at once. This could not have been the Constitution's intention, for it would make minority parties next to impossible when the Constitution already guarantees representation of minority parties in the Constitution Revision Commission and the prohibition of discrimination based on political affiliations. Now we should examine the historical context. Since 2017, political minorities have consistently won the majority of seats in District D. To clarify, District D is zip code 32608. Note, I don't mean the Change Party, for which there are only 2 data points. I mean that this district has consistently voted for, not just for a minority, but against the majority, whoever it happens to be. And it survived people moving, graduating, etc. Of the 87 representatives elected from this district since then, only 15 have been affiliated with the majority party. Excluding the anomalous 2020 election affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, this number drops to a mere 5 representatives. Under the proposed all-at-large system, despite the minority party winning an average of 40% of the votes, they received no off-campus representation. And this is a clear case of voter dilution, contradicting the court's earlier affirmations that citizens have a, quote, essential right to have a fair opportunity to select those who will represent them. The current map effectively submerges the historically minority-affiliated District D by merging it with majority-affiliated districts, diluting its representation. Based on population, District D residents should have secured at least 5 of the 50 seats representing students. Instead, their voices are being drowned out. We acknowledge the potential complications if this court rules in our favor, including the possibility that the Senate might not pass a new map in time for the election in a week. However, this potential outcome does not justify ignoring the unconstitutionality of the current map under ordinary circumstances. Outside of ordinary circumstances, the at-large map has been preserved in the past, and I don't imagine why things would be different in this case. So even if the court were to find this map to be unconstitutional, it could keep the at-large model for this election because of the extraordinary circumstances. I urge you to consider the long-term implications of this decision on fair representation and the integrity of our student government. The proposed all-at-large system, while perhaps well-intentioned, fails to uphold the principles of equitable representation enshrined in the Constitution. And thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you.
My first question, and I'm not sure if this really matters for the merits of your case, but you refer to the current map as, or the current off-campus district as being an at-large district, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding the term at-large properly, and if that's inconsistent with your understanding of it. To me, just because a district is large does not make it at-large. To me, an at-large district would be, let's say you had districts off-campus. There's, 37 of them now? So let's say you had 35 seats apportioned among districts off-campus, and then you had 2 that were elected among all of those districts. That would be at-large, right, because they're overlapping already existing districts. And Florida used to have one of these. You had the state of Florida had carved up districts for the state legislature, and then it would have a statewide elected 1 or 2 representatives. That was around till the mid-1900s. So That's my understanding of what at-large is. Again, I understand, I think your legal argument, and I don't think the semantics of it matter all that much, except to say it's not going to be ruled unconstitutional because it's an at-large, because I don't think it is one.
I take your point. I take it well. I do want to say that when I referred to the off-campus apportionment, the all at-large off-campus apportionment, I was just using the court's prior language to describe that district.
Okay. In that case, I would disagree with the court's referring.
And that's fine. Different court. Was that it? I want to make sure that.
Yeah, no, that was me making sure I understood what your assertions were, and that I wasn't gonna.
Okay, no problem.
Reach the wrong conclusion because I misunderstood.
Okay, absolutely.
Because I understand, like you said earlier, your meat and potatoes is dilution. It's not at large, and so. When you say that District D has voted for the minority party historically, when you say that they voted for a minority party, does that mean they voted for the party that lost the majority of seats in that particular election, or the party that emerged overall in the entirety of the Senate, including seats that were not up in that cycle, the minority? Do you see which
I'll
type
rephrase, and you let me know if I'm going
Sure.
about it the wrong way. I understand that there are 2 elections a year. There's one in the fall, one in the spring. Do you mean to ask me that this is the minority of both combined classes, or the minority of just the fall class that election?
I'm saying, so you said that the minority party wins District D historically. When you're calling something a minority party, are you calling it a minority party because going into that election it had the minority number of seats overall in the Senate, or are you calling it a minority party because it was a minority in that cycle, like it lost most seats in that cycle?
Right. Well, it was the minority going into the election,
Okay.
and it remained the minority after that election.
So they were a minority going in, and they won less than 25 of the seats.
Right, because it would take some time for the rest of the electorate to catch up, because the next time that the other 50% of the seats would become available for election would be in the spring, which isn't based on population. It's based on college. I mean, it's based on population. It's just not based on geographic space, right? The point here is that whichever minority party happens to be running in that election, that minority party has come out triumphant, and it has remained the minority party. With, I will concede one potential exception that never materialized, but the last time that in this case the Change Party became the majority party, that's when the new at-large map came in. So we would not know if the party that would have won District D would have flipped away from Change, right? What I'm saying is that it's not that it's just that District D votes for a particular party, it's that they vote against the majority party.
Right. Okay. And I think that's probably what I have the most trouble with, because I can understand you say it's the party that wins the fewer seats at the time, but my thing is, the party that is winning less seats could have drastically different ideals over time. And the parties have drastically different labels. We churn through political parties here at the University of Florida. So it's kind of hard. And for similar reasons I had during the Stevens case, I have a hard time drawing conclusions about history and all of those things when all of these things change so much.
Well, I did state earlier that it has remained consistent since 2017, and that means graduations, that means students moving. It remained consistent through a pandemic for which we have nothing like that in the record. It was completely unprecedented. So it's been resilient, right? This area of people, which is entitled to 5 seats in the fall class, consistently has always voted against the majority. And by extension, it's always elected minority representatives. Now, I do want to say that, of course, in a college campus, ideas move quickly, and people may change opinions over time. But there's no way for us to have a stable way to track that if we eliminate that district. And now, I do concede that if this minority district were to one day vote for the majority, then maybe it would no longer have to be protected under voter dilution claims. But for now, there's no evidence to support that.
Do you have any evidence regarding like the intentionality of this map being designed to disadvantage minority parties? Like, I'm missing like an intent or a purposeful anything here.
Well, there's two things I can say. The serious thing that I would like to say is that I don't think that it may be necessary. There have been cases of circumstantial evidence being admitted for disparate impact cases, and that was referred to in the last hearing that we had on this map. But the legislature was presented, and I will say the previous legislature, right, was notorious for its dysfunction. It could not agree on anything. It was a 50-50 split of the Senate, and nothing got, next to nothing got passed. One thing that never got passed was apportionment because it's so consequential. It seems to me like out of the maps that were presented to the legislature, only the map that eliminated the minority party's preferred district, District D, right? Well, you know what I'm trying to say, right? That area's preferred party, only that map was adopted. And coming after it being the first time in 100 years that a minority party is able to win a majority of the seats in the legislature, that couldn't have been a coincidence. It adds to the circumstantial element of the evidence. Because an attempt was made to pass maps that preserved minority representation in those areas, but those maps were excluded.
First time a minority party won a majority seats in the legislature.
In 100 years, or ever.
I'm just trying to, they were a minority, but they won a majority.
Right, and that's why I said earlier, right, that we did not get to see, because of the change in the map, whether or not District D voters, in their historic opposition to electing the majority, would have then flipped their party affiliation, right? So in this case, the majority party became change, which was the former minority party, which is, the party that District D had historically elected for as long as at least change had been around. But what happened next is that District D was eliminated, and because of that, we cannot test whether or not those voters would have then voted for another party just because, they vote against the majority, change had become the majority. It would have been reasonable for them to vote for another party at that point.
So it's exactly that concern that gives me pause, because certainly it would be reasonable to say, okay, well, so change won 4 straight elections throughout their existence in this district. That just entitles that district to have its own exact area in perpetuity? Something's not connecting for me there.
Well, not in perpetuity. I did say that if the minority district were to elect the majority, then it may lose its privileges.
Okay.
I do concede that point. And another thing is that I'm not talking about any particular party. I'm not talking about the minority. For example, I am a minority voter, but I'm not affiliated with Change. I have my own party. Now, and I live in District D, right, to clarify. District D has historically rejected the majority. It's not about allegiance to any minority. It's about rejecting whoever the majority is, right? Which is why I presented the hypothetical of, well, we did not get to see, because the map was changed, whether or not District D would have then voted for either Vision or another minority party, because the map was changed.
I'm still rapping.
So your definition of political opinions or affiliations from the Anti-Discrimination Clause is including student government, political opinions and affiliations.
Thank you. That's a great question. And yes, that's what I believe, because the Student Body Constitution also states that political parties do have representation in the Constitution Revision Commission. And that acknowledges the existence of political affiliations at the student government level. No problem. Where did that?
You said from the acknowledged.
Right. So the Constitution acknowledges the existence of student government political parties. And because of that acknowledgement, the Anti-Discrimination Clause should be interpreted in line with that constitutional acknowledgement of student government political parties. The Constitution Revision Commission the Constitution Revision Commission allows for one representative of a minority party to be a part of the deliberations. And that is in the Constitution. This isn't the case like in the United States where political parties aren't mentioned in our Constitution. Political parties are mentioned in the Student Government Constitution, and that is what sets this case apart.
Can you point me to where?
Yes, absolutely. That would be Article 1, Section 4, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll double check for you.
Outside of the anti-discrimination.
Oh, outside of that, yes. No, that's going to take a little bit of research, but it is well, I don't have internet connection here. Just one sec, I can fix it. Now, the Constitution Revision Commission is its own article of the Constitution under amendments, so it should be Article 8, Section 3, and if you direct your attention to Section A, Section 3A2, and I'll read it. 6 students selected by the Student Senate President and approved by a 2/3 vote of the Student Senate. 4 of these selectees must be student senators, of which 1 must be a resident of a residence hall or family housing. 1 must be a member of a minority party or independently affiliated student senator, if any so qualify.
So that is the language you're saying demonstrates that the other thing is referring to student government.
At least that the Constitution isn't blind to the existence of student government political parties. If that question even comes to light, because the anti-discrimination clause isn't about parties per se, it's about it's about political affiliations and opinions. So it may not even have to be narrowly interpreted to just protect political parties. It could also include things such as student organizations that vote a certain way. If you can make a geographic sort of like connection to that space, but we don't have the data for that. So we've presented this case on political affiliation to a party.
I worry about affiliations because of what you just said anecdotally about how you don't affiliate, and yet you are a minority voter. But I do see how that would be stronger under political opinions rather than affiliations. So I just don't know if it is referring to Florida student government political affiliations and opinions. Is kind of where I'm struggling.
And I take your point. However, you have to be affiliated to something, right? And that something is the political parties that our Constitution acknowledges exists. And I feel like otherwise it would essentially pave the way for the total elimination of any sort of minority representation. Remember, we're not asking for the old district model. We're not asking for that. We're not asking for 12 seats for District D, which is what used to be the case. We're asking for that specific geographic space, which has, for as long as minority parties participated in that area, which is 2017, there were no minority parties before then. For as long as they've existed in that area, they've won. Even when they shouldn't. They've survived over 4 years, which is the typical undergraduate stay. And they've also managed to win seats during a pandemic when where voter participation was so low that every other district was totally swept by the majority. So that just speaks to just how strongly the people who live in that district believe in their rejection of whoever the majority is. Because at the end of the day, it isn't necessarily about the party. It is about the political opinion and affiliation which connects to the party. But the opinion here in District D is that whoever the majority is, they reject. And any case that would have shown to the contrary was preempted by the changing of the map. So we can't say that District D would have continued to go for the majority once it became for the minority once it became the majority. They could have just easily switched over to another political party, which is why it's so important for people in my station who aren't affiliated with the minority party, the dominant minority party, Change Party in this case, to preserve the identity of this district so that we stand a chance to elect our own people. Because it isn't a competition between us and the majority in this district. It's a competition against us and Change.
So I understand your argument with respect to history, and I think that there's people who in the Senate that are going to be receptive to that as a policy proposal. But my problem is when we go to the constitutionality of it. And I understand what you're saying with the minority party having, whatever that minority party was, having won this district for a long time. The problem I have, and it goes back to the affiliations thing, I don't think the state of being a minority party would be a political affiliation. You're not affiliated with being a minority. You're affiliated with the entity that is the minority. And so I think when you say that this place has been won by the minority party, that's being won by somebody with a current, that at that instant, the status of being a minority, not the entity that was. And y'all see the sort of the distinction I'm drawing with, I think you can be affiliated with a party that is a minority, but you can't be affiliated with the status of being a minority. And so for that reason, I don't think this presents a problem under Section 4.
You can be affiliated with the opinion that minorities deserve representation.
Sure.
Right? And under the current at-large map, right? It's the same clause. Mm-hmm. Under the current at-large map, definitionally, the only way you can have any representation is if you are the majority. So if you are of the opinion that minority areas deserve some sort of representation that is connected to the population size that lives in that district, that is still an opinion. That's conceding to your affiliation claim, which I don't agree with. I think that I just don't agree with it. And we could get into the particulars of why.
I'm not asking you to agree.
No, absolutely, and I respect that. I do. But what I'm saying is that we could get into the particulars of why, but that's only should the opinion claim also fail. Feel like the opinion comes first. Affiliations are based on opinions, after all.
I don't know if they are, but I mean, again, I think a lot of these are policy considerations, and I think this court ought to be weary of wading into those waters, because I think you present a lot of reasonable points that I think if people are interested in being reelected, then they should be listening to those points. But that's not my job. I have to look and see if this violates Section 4 here, and I just don't think it does.
Well, I'm very skeptical of your point, and the reason why is because should it be a policy consideration, how is that policy consideration supposed to get brought up if there are no minority affiliates, right? You could speak to your majority affiliated senator about how minorities should be elected, but they're affiliated with the majority, and they have no interest in allowing for minority voices. That's ultimately what led to the elimination of the minority districts to begin with. And we're very lucky that the Constitution both prohibits discrimination on political affiliation and opinion, and also acknowledges that political parties exist at the student government level, such that people may be affiliated with them. If it were a policy consideration, those aspects of the Constitution would have been excluded. And I do want to add, because I understand there's a week till the election. This isn't necessarily about changing the map for this case. That's why we filed it as an Article 5, Section 3B1. And we're not asking you to adopt a remedial map. And we know that it's within a week. Well, it just wouldn't be possible, frankly. But the court has previously ruled that when such extraordinary circumstances exist, an at-large map is constitutional. And I think that because it was the map that was adopted previously, it could be readopted in this case. So if it is cause for reluctancy, that we don't want to start the election over by having to throw this map out and then redraw it and then reslate the candidates under the new districts, that's not necessarily what could happen. The court has remedied issues like this in the past. So this really is just about whether or not at any point in the future, minority parties deserve any sort of representation. When they are geographically compact, which because District D is only one zip code, it is, definitionally. There's no argument against it.
So you don't think they could add any zip codes to District D?
They could if they wanted to. Now, for example,
how does that line up with your argument, though?
Well, because say, for example, you have something like District C, which is zip code 32607. Now, District C isn't usually electing people in the minority, but they do constitute what we would call a swing state, so to speak, right? Now, it wouldn't be unreasonable for the legislature to merge District D and C, right, to have an even more competitive district, because that doesn't seem like dilution to me. There is still a minority district, which is D. Only a new population has been introduced, which isn't obviously affiliated and always has been affiliated with the majority. District C swings, so it could be merged, and that's how it would survive your scrutiny. And I do want to say, right, because it is a very good point. It is. I do want to say, I conceded earlier that if a minority district were to lose, right, if it were ever to vote with the majority, then its protections under voter dilution, which is what I'm claiming here, would become suspicious. And because I'm also conceding that District D could be merged with a competitive district, so long as it's not some other not competitive district like A or B, then that is something that the legislature could decide to do to test whether or not District D would remain loyal to the rejection of the majority. But it would protect, on principle, parties from voter dilution.
How long did you say that this district has been being won by the minority party?
Since 2017. Which is the first time that you had, well, the first time without interruption that you've had the minority party running that district. So for as long as there's been a minority party in that district, that minority party has won.
They won a majority of seats in District D every year except 2020.
Because of COVID. And they still won seats during 2020.
Right.
And right now, the minority party, what's
I beg your pardon?
Right now, with the minority party, what are the seats split?
The minority party has no elected off-campus representation currently. And that's because of the new map. The nature of and I agree it's not really an at-large map, but I'm calling it one because that's what the court did. The nature of the at-large map is that you need to be a plurality, like the highest plurality of the votes in that district in order to get any representation whatsoever. Now, it is still going to constitute a reduction in the seats that the minority is used to enjoying, right? Because under the math, it would only be 5 seats compared to their usual 12, right? Because the previous map was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court because it clearly didn't like take population into account properly. Running the numbers over again, it should be 5 seats.
5 seats.
So I'm going to use sort of a real world hypothetical to, I guess, wrap my head around and see if the court agrees with me on my point about affiliation stuff. So if we had a district that had always gone with whatever party happened to be the minority, and it flip-flopped in doing so, going between Democrat and Republican, and it flip-flopped, but it was always whichever one was losing, you wouldn't see this type of claim come out of that. Because those types of claims typically involve this area has always voted Democrat, and now they've gone and drawn it in so that it's Republican, and we know that that's not how those voters vote. That's the sort of the real world scenario where you have a claim, not where you have it flip-flopping back and forth between parties that just happen to be in the minority at the time.
I would like to answer that question.
Sure. But I just don't think it lines up with what.
So you're saying that depending on who's winning, that's what's being reflected in that district?
Right. It's not partisan affiliation. It's just whoever happened to be in power at the time, which is not a partisan affiliation. You can respond.
Right.
And I know you disagree with me.
No.
That's
but,
just how I've
but hey,
rationalized it.
That's what we're here to do, right? I'm interested in finding the truth of it, and I think that it's a point, right? We need to talk about it. So. This court has previously been very skeptical to bring real world issues into the student government fold for a variety of reasons. And in this case, I won't get into the previous cases. In this case, the reason would be that in cases such as your hypothetical, where you have geographic spaces that consistently vote with a political party, that isn't applicable at the student government level whatsoever. And remember, the Constitution addresses student government political parties directly. So that's number one. Number two, in real world scenarios, people live in those spaces. Families stay consistently, right? It's not usual, right? It's possible, but not usual for someone, for people who are from a specific area to move around at least as frequently as a college campus, right? Because you've got new people coming in every year, right? So because of those considerations, because this is a student government meant to serve student needs, it needs to take into consideration the fact that student populations change from year to year. So it's not about, and even though they change from year to year, this district has been consistent. It's been consistent. So we have to consider the academic mission of the university in creating a student government that is for the university campus, right? And on top of that, we also need to acknowledge that if we have to survive the test, that there needs to be some sort of consistency, this case survives it. At least District D. Can't talk about District C, but it can talk about District D.
I think, just to go back to where I think, where I'm at is I think I could agree with almost everything you just said, but still rule against you because of the way I read Section 4 here. So that's where I'm at, and that's where my understanding of this affiliation issue goes.
I want to hear more of your thoughts on that.
I mean, I think that sort of summarizes, I think there's a distinction here when we're talking about a voter dilution issue. You're talking about a party that is established in a particular district and then being disenfranchised, or not disenfranchised, but diluted by the redrawing of a district such that zone goes against that party because these people are affiliated with that party. I think being affiliated with a party is a very different thing from being affiliated with, I'm just going to, just to get my point across here, I'm going to be blunt, a losing tradition. So I think just because there's a difference between voting for a particular party for a long, long time than voting with the party that happened to lose for a long, long time, because those parties are different.
Okay.
If I may. I haven't thought through the affiliation question, but I have thought through the opinion question. And if we are to concede that this is an issue best left to the legislature, then who exactly is supposed to bring the position forward to have representation of minority parties in the geographic space that they have lived in forever, right? Forever. If they can't get elected? Are we supposed to rely on the majority that wrote us out of existence in the first place? We can't do that. We can't. And to posit that that is the intention of the Constitution when there's so much evidence saying that there is a prohibition on political discrimination, when political parties exist at the student government level, and that the elections have to be run in a way that is tailored to the reality of the student government, not a traditional government, it's just too much. And the reliance on people affiliated with the majority, when this map was this map was adopted by the legislature after the legislature was elected under an at-large map, and after those off-campus seats went to the majority because of the nature of because of an at-large map. It's unreasonable to expect that unless the Constitution protects minority voices, then we are giving carta blanca to allow a political system that has no space, not just for minority parties altogether, but for the possibility of minority parties to present an alternative map that represents them.
So do you think that couldn't be done by a voter referendum?
No, because even though the Constitution allows for initiatives to be passed, even though the Constitution has allowed for initiatives and referendums to be introduced to the electorate, the legislature, and I know because I wrote the bill, the legislature eliminated the possibility for people to present initiatives. And when I had the change of heart and presented to the Supreme Court that, hey, the University of Florida student body has the constitutional right to present initiatives so that we can pass new laws when the legislature fails us, which it has done for the last 2 years, the Supreme Court said that it does not have the power to force the legislature to create laws in order for us to exercise that right. No. So because of the court's previous cases, we can't do what you're suggesting.
I'm not asking you to because I think that question came up earlier, and I agree with you to the extent that you couldn't have a referendum that imposed a particular map, but you could have a referendum that altered the Constitution to be more conducive to the argument that you're making in terms of protecting certain districts.
I don't think that it would be wise for the student body to subvert the legislature and codify that District D specifically needs to be its own separate district.
So how is it different from you asking the court to do that?
Because when I ask the court to do it, I ask it to do it through a claim of voter dilution that may or may not expire. If it's a constitutional amendment, District D would forever be its own district, not because of a voter dilution claim, but because the voters decided.
Can I ask a question? So, okay, if anti-majoritarian is a political opinion, like where is the line for what defines a political opinion if it's not based on a opinion or affiliation? I agree, affiliation, no, let's just talk about opinion. But like, if it's just regarding whether a party is winning or losing, I just, like if you're agreeing to be with, like, depending on other people winning or losing, I don't see how that is a, like, concrete, in itself, political opinion.
Could you rephrase your question?
Sorry. So, if political opinion can mean just anti-majoritarian, where's the line for what a political opinion can mean if we separate it from the actual political affiliation?
I understand now. Thank you. It would have to be measurable. It would have to be an opinion that is measurable. And so far, the only opinions that are measurable are voter affiliations. And those affiliations fit squarely under you're either for the majority or you're for a minority. Or, in other words, against the majority.
But I could be voting for or against the party for any number of reasons completely distinct from their status as a majority.
But this is one reason.
Sure, but maybe it's nobody's reason. Maybe not a single person that's voted this way has done it for the reasons you're profiting. So, maybe this has nothing to do with the reason.
It's not a consistent opinion. It
Right.
could be different opinions.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I think that it would be unreasonable for the court to set a standard in which every voter in District D would have to come here and explain their reason for why they may or may not be majoritarian or not.
I hear
Right.
that, but we're looking at the constitutionality. We're looking at the language.
And the language is broad enough that it includes what I suggested was an opinion. It doesn't exclude what I said.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ortiz. The court will be entering into deliberation. I have to say, I'm on the fence here, so I'm going to need opinions from my fellow justices to explain to me, because, yeah.
I think the simplest way I can put it is I think we all generally agree there's no affiliation here. It's the opinion thing.
Yeah.
And pursuant to what Justice Miller was saying, I don't think counter-majoritarian is a political opinion. I am weary of us creating a basket of what is or is not a political opinion, but I definitely don't think that's one. Because for the reason I said, that there can be any number of reasons people vote a certain way. Being part of a minority or majority is not one of them, and that's why affiliation is something that matters. And you can't be affiliated with a success or failure. You're affiliated with a party that is party or parties that are succeeding or failing.
And why is it disjunctive, political opinion or affiliation, if they're synonymous?
Well, I didn't intend that to come off
No,
as
I
saying
know, but
they're
like,
synonymous.
just asking based on the language.
I think it's just hard to have an opinion based on comparing yourself to the other party
Mhm.
based on numbers only. I feel like opinion, if you look up like the definition of opinion, like if we're confused as to what that word means, would be based on like your feelings about something, your opinion, your ideas about something. And I think that an opinion as being like less than, in comparison to always what another party is, has less to be, less of like an opinion and more of just like a standing, I guess, like where you are comparatively. I would feel differently if there was an area that had the same feelings regarding a certain matter consistently over time. If like, they were consistently worried about, on-campus safety, like over time. If there was some sort of like opinion or sentiment or some feeling there, but just in the comparison of being minority and majority, I have trouble feeling that that's an opinion rather than that's what the outcome has been in the electoral process for years. And considering that these parties do change so frequently, like the shifting in dominance can maybe reflect more of like electoral dynamics.
Yeah, I think to your point, you would have to assume that every party that's ever represented this district had some uniting opinion across all these years for you to get to the opinion thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't see how you can answer that. I don't know how we would ever know.
And just like a principle of constitutionality too is just, to your point of, how do we ensure our representation, is the ways in which we need to go about the process of ensuring that minorities are represented is through the majority. I mean, the check on that would be the student voting population. Like, the public is supposed to be a check on who's getting elected. That's just one of the things I remember to come up. But, it's really up to the voters too to check the representatives. We can't take any during deliberation.
I mean, I go back to, I think you could agree with a lot of things the petitioner said. and
Yeah.
still have to rule against them in order to follow this provision in good faith.
I'm very compelled by his data of 7 years of not the majority winning a certain zip code. Like, that's compact. I don't know. Like, I'm looking at this case that is like, it was in Steve's position, the Florida Supreme Court case about litigation. And I don't know, it's like all there except for a minority party. Because it's not the same minority party.
That's the missing piece.
Yeah, but
Gave us a good one.
because it's a majority minority district that's consistently, and it's, I don't know, it's just, I do agree with Justice McClay that it is dangerous to define a political opinion as this. And I think if we rule for petitioner, that would be defining this as a political opinion. And I don't know. I mean, we could, but it would not. It would just be.
I think we would be, by ruling with the petitioner, I think you would be designating a result of an election to be an opinion. So I don't think that
I see what
can
you're
be.
saying. You can say it.
No, I know. I just hear petitioner's point of what is the non-majority party supposed to do.
I think I hear that point too, and that's one of the only thing that I'm pulled in his favor in a lot of ways, but I just don't think we can get past the text of the Constitution here. Like I said, I mean, and I'm not to disclose political views, but I think there are going to be ears receptive to this type of argument in the process in which the map is drawn. I just don't think it's the way that the Constitution is written. That's right. It's just a non-discrimination.
With political opinion is consistently aligning with an affiliation of non-majority.
But non-majority is not affiliation; it's a result.
I see what you're saying now.
Like I think the facts are what makes this hard, but the law is very clear as to what happens.
Yeah. I see what you're saying now. I'm going to give the court 3 more minutes to think about it. It's 9:41 right now. What could be a remedy, though, for them to?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, I think if we want to if you want to remedy the constitutional problem that in my opinion stops him today, then there's a vote of referendum, as would any other problem with what the Constitution says.
And that goes back to the checks and balances I was saying, where to check elected officials, that's the public.
But again, when you talk about remedies, that's not us.
Yeah.
We apply what's here in front of us.
Yeah. 2 more minutes. You vote however you want to vote.
Thanks for clarifying.
You too.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
I mean, what about the fact that in Section 3, the other part of the Constitution refers to minority party? Does that lend any credence to his argument?
Where's that?
Section 3A2, where where he points to his support for political opinion, meaning UF student government.
Section 3
opinion.
of.
Sorry, Article 8.
Oh.
I know it's kind of pressing straws. I recognize that.
What's this determining? What is this composing of though? What is this? What is
This is the Constitutional Revision Commission.
So it's the composition of the commission must be including I think that's for political representation purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That's what I was getting from it too. You ready to vote?
I move to vote.
I second. Okay. Alrighty. Alright, the court was asked to interpret Article 1, Section 4, as well as Article 3, Section 2A and 3 of the UF Constitution to determine the constitutionality for Fall 2024 Senate Reapportionment Act. All those in favor of finding the Constitution as is constitutional, say yes.
Are we
Or
granting petitioner? Wait.
we are, okay, so let me rephrase this. All those, because he's just asking us to interpret, right?
True. Okay.
That's why, yeah. So
Interpreting
Okay.
the as is.
Yeah, so all those in favor of finding the Constitution as
The Senate bill.
I'm sorry,
The current
the current Senate bill map constitutional, say yes.
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 Yes. It was a great argument though.
Thank you.
And I do think you'll have people that are receptive to that.
I think so too.
Are we adjourned?
Oh, and with that, this meeting is adjourned on Monday, September 30th at 9:46.